Then we'll also go to town. We'll just bring in different people together, what we'll just call this some sort of town hall to hear from the people of their official tag or toga as Nigerians, as citizens. How do they feel being in this country? How do they feel seeing people leave the country? How do they feel watching government make those policies and it affects not just them, but their immediate families and the like? So we'll get to hear from all of them in a relaxed manner to just bear their minds on what they see and what they expect of governance as we kick into the year 2024.
Indeed, Chamberlain, I mean, certainly we cannot wait to hear from our guests. The president's speech, very instructive, very detailed as well, you know, saying very clearly that he feels the pains of the people and is aware of the conversations that has been happening. I mean, I'm going to be reading the paragraph here. He says, I am well aware that for some time now, the conversations and debates have centered on the rising cost of living, high inflation, which is now above 28%, and the unacceptable high underemployment rate. And he says, I'm not oblivious to the expressed and sometimes unexpressed frustrations of my fellow citizens. I know for a fact that some of our compatriots are even asking if this is how our administration wants to renew their hope. So indeed, I mean, he is aware of the conversations that are out there. And he's also talking about, well, trying to give comfort to the people, saying, dear compatriots, take this from me. The time may be rough and tough. However, our spirits must remain unbowed because tough times never last. So indeed, let's say the leader of the country is aware of the difficulties that lots of people are facing. I mean, the speech goes and then he goes on to now explain what precisely he intends to do to ensure that, you know, this pain is reduced as time goes on. He talks about the provision of electricity. He says in Dubai, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and himself agreed to a new deal to speed up the delivery of the Siemens energy power project that will ultimately deliver reliable supply of electricity. And he also talked about food, which is an area where inflation has really been high, going up to at least 30%. He says to ensure constant food supply, security, and affordability, we will step up our plan to cultivate 500,000 hectares of farmlands across the country to grow maize, rice, wheat, millet, and other staple crops. He also says they've launched dry season farming with 120,000 hectares of land in Jigawa State last November under the National Wheat Development Program. So there are a number of things in the president's speech. It's roughly about 3 pages long. A number of things to consider in this particular speech. There's also the part, I'm sure the Nigeria Labour Congress and indeed labor unions across the country will be looking forward to this, where he says it is in this spirit that we're going to implement a new national living wage, not a minimum wage, a new national living wage for our industrious workers this new year. That is in the president's speech. So that's certainly something that the NLC and TUC and all the other labor unions can certainly look forward to. Aya, were there any parts of the speech that stood out for you?
I find it very, very interesting when the president said he will fight every obstacle. That for me is a high point. Every obstacle that impedes business competitiveness and in Nigeria, and he will not, he said, and I quote, I will not hesitate to remove any clog hindering our path to making Nigeria a destination of choice for local and foreign investments. I'll probably want to focus on the fact that he said he was going to fight obstacles and clogs in the wheel. That reminds me, and you also would remember, governors, maybe one or two of them, former governors now in the north, and even the current Minister of Solid Minerals, and a number of other people have said that they identify certain people who are impeding one thing or the other in the nation. The question then is, it sounds to me like the president is aware that there are certain clogs, whether these are institutional, individual, or infrastructural. Those are questions that I may not be able to answer now. Perhaps then we will be expecting the president to come up with those, maybe in the coming days, maybe through his aides or even through his ministers or any of these people, to remove these clogs that are hindering local and foreign investments and consequently hindering prosperity for the nation and hindering, the dividends of democracy, as we say, to get to the people. I also note with a bit of caution that the president mentioned the fact that there is a need for the different power dynamics in the country to work together, the federal government and the state governments to work together, ministries, departments, and agencies to work together. We've had issues in that regard for a while, guys. I'm sure you would remember that. Gratifying to know that the president has some kind of a mechanism, he mentioned it in that speech, to monitor performance. How effectively all of these things will come together to give us the Nigeria that we want, I guess we'll wait to see. Now, is politics going to play a significant purpose in hindering or encouraging our nationalism or our sense of nationhood? That's something that I wait to see. In the previous program, the morning brief with our colleagues, you also noted that the CDS, the Chief of Defense Staff, said that there are differences between military decisions and political decisions. Military issues different from political issues. Political issues are not that of the security agencies, they are that of the politicians and the people who are in political office. I guess we'll wait to see how all of these things will pan out. It's a new year, but let us know, how do you feel about the president's speech? What are the things, what are the high points for you? Are there things that you feel are shortcomings that are not enough? Let's know your thoughts on the program. Chamberlain.
Well, yes, indeed. I will be glad to hear from all of you. The first day of the year, so we'll just sit back and take it all in and look at the speech, the comment that the president is giving. It just tells us where his head is. So you'll expect, or we all will expect, that the ministers who he also spoke about here will follow through with what he said, such that they will then hopefully ensure that results, that's what matters at this point in time. Because he did say that they will work towards ensuring they remove all the obstacles. But, there are questions too. What's going on with that Taiwo Udele's committee, by the way, about tax?
Oh, the president mentioned it. He also mentioned that in his speech, and I'm going to look for the part very quickly. He says, in this new year, we will race against time to ensure all the fiscal and tax policy reforms we need to put in place are codified and simplified to ensure the business environment does not destroy value. So indeed, that reform committee certainly comes into place, and it does appear that they're going to be under some pressure to deliver on time. Don't forget that they had 1 year in which to come up with their plan and implement. They are also an implementation committee, as that committee chairman has emphasized. So the president is saying that, mentioning that and highlighting that as well. Chamberlain, I think that for a number of Nigerians, while these words may be comforting somewhat, that the president is aware of the hardship in the land, what they'll be waiting to see is how he runs with this. The president is also saying, well, it's not just going to be for the governors and the president and ministers, it's going to be for everybody. But I think that Nigerians are going to be waiting for the leadership to set the pace, to show the tone, not just in terms of what they say, but also in terms of how they carry themselves and how they also behave. Their entourages, their way of living. People are already beginning to call, I think, a lot of the New Year messages we saw, especially from religious leaders, called on the leadership class to show that they actually understand the suffering in the land, not just by what they say, but also by their own personal lifestyle.
So it will be incredibly important. Government agencies, for instance, customs, those are areas where we expect to see immediate response and reaction. So how they relate with businesses, what they do at the port, they don't have to be competing with businesses. That's not why they're there. Because if businesses don't exist, I don't know where you want to get your, duties from. So preservation of those. So I guess we'll wait and see. All right, so the dailies also put to bed yesterday. They're not on holiday as of yet, and so we'll just take a look at what some of them highlighted this morning. And taking a look at that, beginning with the Vanguard newspaper today. Hardship. Decisions I've taken in best interest of Nigeria, as ascribed to the president. So is what you see right here, ascribed to him. So part of his speech here this morning. So, of course, based on the decisions, the policies, information he's got, and then coming through with this. So, yes, it's one thing for intentions. It's another to see how they impact society. I mean, you know, you have what you call, when copywriters do their copy, they go for copy testing to be sure that the intended message is actually what people internalize from those messages. So if it's not, they go back and change the copy before you come through. So perhaps that principle may apply here. It may have been well intended, but what kind of effect is it having? What other bottlenecks are there to perhaps obscure or impede negatively those policies that have taken in the best interest of the country? So those are the things that you expect them to go ahead and address. So that's the big lead you see right here on the front page. And then you see this one above this, NLC, NECA, LP, others, fire NAS for raising 2024 budgets by 1.2 trillion naira. So they were talking to us about that, what informed this decision, because clearly you can see here that these groups are not in any way happy with how the budget came through in terms of this increase. So that we'll get to hear moving forward. That's Vanguard today.
Well, indeed, some things will be inevitable because, I mean, you heard as members of the House Committee on the Judiciary, it was the joint committee, as a matter of fact, Senate and the House, you know, asking deep questions about how the judiciary was left out and given such a meager budget. So, indeed, well, I'm sure analysts will certainly be weighing in on that. But let's quickly look at leadership for you this morning. They're wishing you a very happy New Year. It's right there on their front page. Happy New Year 2024. But the lead story right there, focusing on the president's message, Tinubu governors promise rosy year amid hardship. I took difficult decisions to save Nigeria from fiscal catastrophe. That's attributed to the president. Outlines plans to improve power, fuel supply, tasks opponents, others on nation building. That story is on page 4 for you. They also follow up on what is happening in Plateau. Plateau killings at Teku North Central elders demand justice. And just in case you're wondering if you're going to be seeing another increase in electricity tariffs, NERC says no plan to raise electricity tariffs. That is right there on the front page as well. But look at this. Naira suffers fall, loses 96.55% value to dollar. That is also on the front page right there. It's a page 7 read for you. Not all bad news, though. Investors recap 13 trillion naira from capital market in 2023. So if you're an investor in the right stocks in the capital market in the past year, some people certainly were smiling home as the bulls eventually had it at the end of the day. Well, I think to also reflect the market realities, Leadership Newspapers is also announcing a change in cover prices. So you might want to stay informed on how much your new paper or the regular paper is now going to be costing. Oh, we'll leave it there for Leadership Newspapers. Ayo.
Well, the Guardian newspaper isn't also lagging, so to speak, in the area of that cost of newspapers. It's right there under the infographics there. NPAN announces changes in newspaper cover prices. Just so you know, and as Mark said, be advised on the price. But the lead story is fairly hopeful, joyful, should I say? Nigerians hopeful amid failed promises on lingering problems. That's about 2024. That's a very interesting coinage by the editor. Nigerians hopeful amid failed promises on lingering problems. And that sounds like a topic for a long symposium. But look at other stories, and of course, those issues in the infographics you see are energy, refinery, stock market, port, currency, inflation, manufacturing, and labor. get the copy of the Guardian newspaper for more details on that. One of the stories there is about the speech the president made. Times are tough, but we must keep hope alive. Tinubu charges Nigerians. Find the details of that on page 6 of the paper. Wondering why the National Assembly increased the budget? Why 2024 budget was increased by 1.27 trillion naira. The details you'll find on page 3. Beg your pardon, of the Guardian newspaper this morning. Several other stories there, but right above the nameplate, the Guardian is also saying, Happy New Year. That's the Guardian newspaper today.
Yeah, so look at New Telegraph. Plateau. We won't allow terrorists bring Nigeria down, ascribed to Tinubu. And so, restructure Nigeria to avert more killings. Injustice, Clark tells president. Whatever happened to that narrative? I mean, there was a sing-song at the time when I think even this party, several of them were in opposition. They spoke about that a lot. They wanted several conferences. They wanted state police. They wanted so many things. Maybe it's early days yet. I never any such thing about early days. If it was what you wanted from the get-go, you might have just hit the ground running with it. But who knows? Who knows? And then you see Pope Francis prays for affected families. Sarah seeks ICC's intervention. Atiku, Nigerians faced existential challenges in 2023. And then banditry, more woes for a troubled nation. So all of that associated here. And then part of his speech, they also highlighted here at the bottom strip there. New Year, I'm aware of your sufferings, President tells citizens. But the picture you see there, guess who? Former President Buhari. Well, there you go. That's New Telegraph this morning.
And went to look at the Nigerian Tribune, which is highlighting that message of hope now. We will implement national living wage this year, attributed to the president. Tinubu says his administration made for tough times. NLC demands implementation of signed agreement. Moguls are also there on the front page. The Ondo State governor, new Ondo State governor, newly sworn in, Ayedatiwa, is also there. Don't forget that Ondo will be going to the polls this year. And who can forget Rivers and the drama that has followed that state? But they certainly will be looking out to see if the drama is going to end. Is it all over?
Nope.
Because there's been some quiet there in recent times, Jimmy.
Don't forget, Honorable Chair resigned
as
a member and as speaker. So, definitely that was an event that many thought, oh, several things must have happened for that to go on at that point. So what else do we expect from that? Never know.
Well, you never can tell. But the things they're also looking at, the exchange rate and inflation, monetary policy stance, Naira versus cryptocurrency. Is there still that craze for cryptocurrency?
CBN just said, yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay.
So now there'll be a renewed verb for that. So who knows?
Indeed. I know that there is now a push also for the e-Naira, but I think that there needs to be some enlightening done in that regard. What exactly is the difference between my e-Naira and me just transacting using any of my banking apps? I thought I was already doing it electronically anyway. But let's leave it there for the Nigerian Tribune.
Well, this Nigerian newspaper is making a promise, well, according to what the president also said from his speech. 2024, tough times won't last forever. Tinubu tells Nigerians in New Year message, find the story on pages 4 and 5, assures equal opportunities for all, promises to implement new workers' wages, among others. Every decision I've taken in the last 7 months is in best interest of Nigeria. Well, inset right beside the pictures of the president is a quote from that speech. Check the details there. Did someone just say Rivers? I don't know, but the name Wike is right beside that quote. FCT under Wike's watch 2024 is pregnant with deliverables. That's not a quote. So find out what that means on page 13 of this Nigerian newspaper today. Right at the bottom of the page, Serap writes ICC prosecutor seeks justice for victims of Plateau killing. That's one of the most gruesome and saddening moments of 2023 for us in this country as far as I am concerned, and I'm hoping that there will be some significant closure for the people, because how do you even go around it? And my mind has not left what the governor said, the governor of Plateau State, about the people, some people occupying, non-state actors, dare I say, occupying certain areas in the state, and it seems like there is nothing anyone can do. And he's saying we need political will. So who is going to muster this political will? He mentioned the president, as the governor of the state mentioned the president. I guess we'll wait to see how that pans out. Right beside the nameplate, a here Fubara-backed speaker resigns from assembly, quits, claim to office. Find that story on page 5. That's this Nigeria newspaper today.
Wow, so he's gone. So he's no longer a lawmaker, or what? It means there'll be what? By-election to replace him? Oh. Is that going to go down in history as people resigning from office in this country? You know, we always say the country lacks history of such persons. Will this pass as one? Oh boy.
He didn't just resign from office as speaker, he also resigned his membership of the State House of Assembly. Is that?
I thought that's what I heard.
Well, we have to double confirm that.
Oh. Okay.
Well, might need to double confirm that unless we run to town.
Because I don't want to run with all sorts of stuff without checking. But look at Daily Trust now. Tinubu to Nigerians. I am aware of your frustrations. So the rest, the riders, you can see right there, all listed here this morning. So you can see an image of Abuja market. So people just trying to get what they can for this festive season, this holiday season, which also is still going on for a lot of people. That's Daily Trust this morning.
And Nigerian News Direct ends with this. Naira ends 2023 49% weaker against dollar as federal government fails to deliver on 750 Naira to the dollar target. I think they've since abandoned that particular plan, but hey, I mean, what we heard was that it was supposed to be trending. The real value was supposed to be around that rate. You also find this here, oil production, NUPRC orders players to supply crude to local refineries by June. NIPCO commissions auto CNG station in Abuja. So indeed, for those who will be looking to buy CNG or transition to CNG in the new year, I guess a number of stations are already looking to see how they can meet that need. We leave it there for the Nigerian News Direct.
Yeah, I think we're going to leave it here as well. We'll take a look at some of the dailies here this morning. We're back in just a moment, everyone. Stay on with us.
Than 48 hours to the end of 2023, federal lawmakers are resuming plenary on a Saturday in their determination to keep their January to December budget cycle. This special session is to receive the reports of the committees on appropriation in the Senate and the House of Representatives. The breakdown of the report shows that 1.74 trillion naira is for statutory transfers, 8.27 trillion naira is for debt servicing, 8.77 trillion naira is for recurrent expenditure, and 9.995 trillion naira is earmarked for capital expenditure.
The ayes have it.
In a committee of the whole, both chambers considered the reports of the committees on appropriation and subsequently passed the budgets.
Statutory transfers in total as recommended. Total debt service as recommended.
While the sum of 9,995,143,298,028 naira only is for contribution to the development fund for capital expenditure.
However, lawmakers have concerns, especially as regards the implementation of the budgets.
The MDAs, instead of them to swing into action immediately the budget is signed by Mr. President, they wait until the funds is released. And this is a wrong approach. So as a committee, I'm giving kind of advice an instruction to all the MDAs in the country that they shouldn't wait for the funds to be released. Immediately, the president signs this budget, which I believe any moment from now is going to be signed. What we expect from them as Committee on Public Procurement is for them to start what we call a procurement plan.
The issue of implementation, we had procurement process. That process is a little bit delaying the implementation of the budget. But we had discussion with the Bureau of Public Procurement how to fast-track that process. So I assure you that the implementation will start as soon as possible.
But one fantastic thing they did was to adjust the exchange rate with reality that is on the ground from 750 to 800, which now gave us more funds. And those funds were committed to the new project that the president sent in to be able to take care of challenges that need to be dealt with.
The National Assembly also increased the estimates submitted by the president by 1.2 trillion naira. The lawmakers also approved an external borrowing plan to the tune of 7.3 trillion naira. Dele Omoyeni, Channels Television News.
Welcome back to Sunrise Daily, which now runs from 9 to 11 a.m. Oh, dear. I know. Good morning, gentlemen. I have two gentlemen joining us here in the studios. Honorable Philip Agbese is the Deputy Chairman, House Committee on Media and Public Affairs, and sitting beside him is Eze Onyekwe, who is a legal practitioner and the lead director, Center for Social Justice. Gentlemen, Happy New Year to both of you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Happy New Year, Nigerians.
Thank you. So we'll hope we'll try and adjust your IFB so you can get some clarity on that one. Honorable, I know you already have some feedback concerning the budget that was passed over the weekend from across board Nigerians speaking up about it. Even this morning too, saying different groups now are speaking up saying they're not happy that National Assembly had to jack it up by 1.2 trillion naira. So could you give us a background? What informed that decision?
Well, first, thank you for the opportunity to be your first guest for the year, and I believe that is going to change my channels. Now, the issue of budget, I think in the last 72 hours, the National Assembly, particularly the House of Representatives, will receive very serious commendations from highly placed individuals and groups across the country. First, commending our meticulousness in handling the budget. I remember that the appropriation bill was sent in about a month ago, and we had to do the unusual, suspend plenary for about 21 days. Within this period, we sat even on weekends, and from what happened, you saw, virtually every member was already back home for Christmas. And we had to return back to Abuja, to fulfill our promise. You recall when the appropriation bill was presented to both chambers of the National Assembly, particularly for the Right Honorable Speaker, His Excellency Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, he said the 2024 budget must meet the earnings and aspirations of the common Nigerian citizen. And in doing that, we took our time to consider a lot of stuff, issues, that are important to the well-being of the average Nigerian citizen. And I think it was, in consonant with that we arrive at some of the differences that we now have today. So when people say we jacked up the budget by 1.2 trillion, I don't think that is exactly the situation. And I will give you a background to that. Remember that when Mr. President presented the appropriation bill to the National Assembly, he pegged dollar at 750 naira. And we looked at the situation. Today the dollar is exchanging for 1,300 naira in the open market. So we didn't see any reason, to have that 750 benchmark. And we carried out our consultations. Remember today, the National Assembly, particularly the House of Representatives, will have about 139 committees. And, our various committees were charged, with the sole responsibility of looking at the core issues. It is also our duty as lawmakers, to amend the law. So we were not expected to return the document back to Mr. President as if, it was a switch a kind of electronic switch where you just put in something and it gives you back like that. You know, as lawmakers, you know, it was our duty to look at it, and that we did. Aside that, we equally, before arriving at some of these considerations, we had meetings with the MDAs. You know, we invited them, and they came. Our various committees sat with them. You know, what Nigerians don't know, the Herculean task of scrutinizing this document. For instance, in the committee, one of the committees where I was privileged to serve, we saw the Nigerian Railway Corporation, you know, making a proposal for 4 million naira for foreign travels. And you and I know very well, because, you know, we want to see the kind of railway system in China, in Egypt, and other parts of the world, but in Nigeria here. And we challenge the MDA. Which part of the world are you going to travel with just 4 million naira?
That's a different field entirely. But let's get Mr. Nikwe's response to what your thought is about why it was 1.2 trillion naira addition to what was presented. Mr. Nikwe, do you subscribe to his explanation as to why they had to do that?
Well, evidently, if you had dollar to exchange to the naira officially at 750, and you now move it up by 50 naira to 800 to the dollar, more money will be available. But my own challenge is, what did we do with additional sum? It's not that they created any new money, because as he rightly pointed out, the value of the naira to the dollar, the I&E window, is not 750, neither is it 800, much more than that. So my challenge is that after getting these new sources of funding, I had expected it to be dedicated to more critical areas like education and health, like cutting down the deficit, because we are still going to borrow over 9-point-something trillion to fund the budget. But what I saw is that, for instance, the National Assembly had an executive proposal of about 190, and they have ended up giving themselves about 334 or thereabout. I don't know the exact figure, but it's not less than 300 and something billion. And of course, such monies should have been properly channeled. And that brings me to something I thought the National Assembly should have looked at. In all our previous romances with removing fuel subsidy, even if it is a little, under a budget it was removed, and we have PTDF, which the former president superintended over. Under Jonathan, there was Shopee. So you could see this money being earmarked. We could say, this is how much we've saved. But under the present regime, what has happened? It was a wholesale removal of the subsidy. And the money was left to float in the bottomless pit called Consolidated Revenue Fund. And there is nothing it has been earmarked for you to track where exactly is this new money we are saving. Rather, we are still borrowing at the same old level we were doing before this so-called windfall came in. And even to make matters worse, between the last time former President Buhari went to the National Assembly to get approval of over 23 or 24 trillion in ways and means, after that approval, we have incurred another 7-point-something trillion in ways and means, which the president just wrote to the National Assembly, and even the former National Assembly we used to call rubber stamp, held some hearings, wasted some time, allowed some commentators to talk about it before approval. But the one that was sent to the Abavio Senate and this National Assembly, was it on Saturday or whichever day, they simply lifted the gavel and brought it down. No discussion. So it has now become the norm that we borrow, we take money from the CBN against the spirit and letter of Section 38 of the CBN Act and go back and securitize it, which is an anathema to the provisions of the law, because you are permitted to borrow only 5% of last year's actual revenue. Was last year's actual revenue, 2022 actual revenue, was 7.5 trillion, 5% of it, definitely against the law, and you are supposed to pay within a year. And here we are continuing the norm. So that's my challenge. I have no challenge with adding 1.2 trillion, but I have a challenge with what did you do with the additional money?
Honorable Agbasa, how did this elude you? National Assembly.
Yes. You see, when the president came on board, of course, when the 10th Assembly came on board, for the first time, we received the supplementary budget bill consideration. We didn't just take the gavel up, like my brother said, and hit it. No, we invited stakeholders. We looked at it. It took us a week. Well, I think time wasting is actually not the issue, because for us, some of us will understand that we're going to be in parliament for just 4 years. And for this period of 4 years, the country has to move. And if we all agree that, yes, we have a lot, of mileage to cover as a country, having deficit in infrastructure, deficit in virtually education, health sector,
if I could just jump
and
in,
all of that.
What is the National Assembly's thinking about ensuring that since the subsidy is removed, where is that money channeled towards, as is given previous examples?
Yeah, before the House of Representatives today, I can confirm to you authoritatively that at the moment we have a bill which has passed second reading, which we call the Infrastructure Commission. We are actually we are looking at a situation where savings from fuel subsidy removal will be channeled into infrastructure, and we're going to have a commission for that. So that bill is, in the offing.
Is that an executive bill or coming from members?
No. It was, I think, sponsored by the Right Honourable Deputy Speaker Okeze Kalu.
So at the moment, we have nothing whatsoever from the executive on that?
Yes,
no proposal, no suggestions?
Yeah, but, Mr. President, when he removed fuel subsidy, first and foremost, we all agree that, yes, there was corruption in that sector and there was a need for the removal of fuel subsidy. We have been dealing with the impact of that. And I think the issue of palliative, redistribution of funds, making additional provision of resources to cater for infrastructure. We, as a parliament, will be looking at those critical issues, especially with the implementation of the 2024 appropriation bill when it's passed into law. But again, let me quickly add, because the current National Assembly, one thing we did when we received the budget document was, first in history, was to hold a town hall meeting, with Nigerians. And our decision wasn't just about, today we have the power, we have been elected by Nigerians to represent them, so we can take absolute decision on their behalf. The House of Representatives, under the leadership of Abakar Bichi's Committee on Appropriation, we did invited Nigerians. We met at the Hilton. The Right Honourable Speaker was there, civil society organizations, I think his group was there, or Center for Social Justice, Equity and Transparency, they were there. And we looked at these issues. And what we have done so far is part of the suggestions that we have received from that town hall meeting. Because people came in and say, we in fact, in considering this budget, let me just tell you, quite a lot went behind the scene. And one of the issues that we looked at is the issue of federal character in terms of distribution of projects across the country. We're very serious about that. And we looked at a situation where in time past, you see budgetary allocations, concentrated in one part of the country, against another geographical location with lesser allocation. We ensure that we have equal distribution of resources. And looking at some of the critical issues today that are very, very germane to our national growth and development, the issue of security. I remember when we invited the Chief of Defense Staff, the Chief of Army Staff, as deputy spokesperson, even not being a member of that committee. Of course, we attend some of these meetings to hear exactly what is taking place between our parliament and those that we have invited. And we looked at some of these details. And, in times without number, I've seen my colleagues, asking the MDAs, what do we do? What are our challenges? Tell us. Because we don't want to leave these challenges behind. We don't want to pretend about the problems. You come with a document before us. You are talking about your personnel costs. And that's why today, we have a budget where the capital expenditure is higher for the first time than the personnel. Because we want to build a new country. We want a country where our citizens are happy. We want a country where we are able, because if you like it or not, the 10th Assembly, till the end of time, our history with the history of the executive is going to be read together. So we don't want an executive that sits down, you present a document to us, we don't know what is going on. And part of that, we're going to be embarking on vigorous oversight activities as soon as they commence the implementation of the 2024 budget.
But if I may, I was just about to ask you a question, but yes, you want to quickly respond.
If I may take a clue, the challenge is not so much about what you've written on the paper called the budget. It is about how you implement it, because I've always maintained that if you look at capital expenditure, for instance, by September for 2023, the MTF told us, and what they presented in the budget speech told us, that they've only done 25% for 2023 at the end of September, October. Now, what happens in real life is that you must pay salaries, otherwise workers will be on strike. Statutory transfers, money to NJC, money to National Assembly, no go area, you must transfer it. Debt service, you must do that. Otherwise, your rating, which is already on the floor, gets lower. So it's only after you have finished everything, all these things I mentioned, whatever little remains is what you remember to put into CapEx. And that CapEx is divided into two. Even a good part of what we are calling capital expenditure may not qualify to have an impact on the lives of real Nigerians. Because if you are doing a lot of administrative capital, for instance, the vehicles that were bought by members of the National Assembly is capital. When they are building new buildings, office blocks, buying furniture, it's capital expenditure. And most of these things, you import them, and so they don't even impact on the local economy. So in essence, it's not what you've written here that matters. It's how you are going to implement them at the end of the day. I am not saying the executive and the legislature should be at loggerheads. What I'm saying, in essence, is like all these issues that were raised about palliatives. Everybody knows that nobody is getting anything. We should have dedicated that fund, not through a private member's bill or by the speaker or the deputy speaker. It should have been part of the policy framework coming from the executive or even coming from the ruling party, pushed through the executive, and of course you have the majority in the legislature, so that we can earmark and target and say, this money, this is the money you voted for this. We can now say, as members of civil society, we focus and report on them. Otherwise, the way it is now, the money is being frittered away. The deficit is not even reducing. And in fact, from what I read in the media may be wrong, because I've not seen the full budget details, the 8 point something the new money that are going to borrow for deficit financing, about 5 point something trillion of it is going to be from the domestic scene. And specifically, they have included ways and means as part of that funding. When we're already having problems with the 24 trillion that was approved, the new 7.5, they're writing it into the budget that even the money they're going to borrow locally, domestically, that a good part of it should come from ways and means. Simply collect money from the central bank, flouting the rules, the law which you made. So that is my challenge about these things. It's not just about general facts and figures. Furthermore, the budget, as I see it, is a continuum between plans and policies and laws. Plans and policies and laws on their own make no meaning until you put the resources down in the budget to implement them. If you have a law, for instance, the gender-based violence law, the VAP law, where you have a situation where it was given to NAPTIP, but there's no budget line for it from the budget office and the National Assembly. So that law is hanging and people are complaining. You don't give an agency a responsibility without resources. So, but I don't see the link between the 8-point agenda of Mr. President or even a national development plan and the current laws. For instance, there are critical things. We have over 20 million children out of school. Where is the line of the vote in the Ministry of Education that says, since Mr. President has a 4-year tenure, let's say we will take 2 million children or 1 million children out a year, and you see that budget line and report on it, reporting for results, so that at the end of the year, we now see whether 500,000 or 600,000 have been removed. We are virtually the poverty capital of the world. We have a lot of our women dying at childbirth, okay, maternal and child health issues. Where is the vote in the health budget we can track and target to say, have we reduced it by 2%, 3% at the end of the year? So voting massive figures all around and calling them doesn't impress me anymore after having watched the budget for over 20 years. I need dedicated sums I can target for results.
Well, please, let me just quickly chip in here because he mentioned something very important. First and foremost, I'm coming from where he is today. I was in the civil society before going into parliament. And I think in understanding some of these things, from the civil society perspective, it is actually different from realities, from what you see. Because initially, before our seminars and workshops, to understand some of these issues, you cannot find these budget lines that he has mentioned. You can't define them. But I understand that a program like the homeschool feeding program, in schools, it's something that is being done by government to encourage more children, running away from school, encouraging children to equally go to school. That program has some resources already budgeted for it. And in terms of capital expenditure, like I mentioned earlier, the budgetary allocations that have been put in place, are meant to rehabilitate some of these moribund health facilities. So these programs cannot clearly be spelled out in the budget. It's an economic document. It's a financial document. It's not a literature material where you read everything out. But of course, we must give it to Mr. President. One, I always say he's a very lucky president because he has, capable hands that he has been able to appoint into some of these sensitive agencies and ministries. And they are doing their best. We have seen it, in the security sector. We have seen the quality of appointment made so far and the interventions that are being carried out. If you go to the health sector again, so like we will all agree and we will support the government. There's no such like a rubber stamp parliament as far as this current parliament is concerned. We're all there. People from about 8 political parties. Can everybody just move along with the president when you are coming from even the opposition political parties? No. All we want or all we understand today is that there is a national need, for all of us to develop the country. And when you see a president that is serious, about his words, just like the speech he made today, he stated it clearly that I understand the challenges. He even went further to say, I understand that some persons may even be saying, is this how we are going to renew your hope? That is a very sincere president.
All right.
Right. So when you see that sincerity of purpose coming from a national leader like Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and you have a National Assembly that is equally ready to support the president.
Ayo's got questions for both of you as well. Go ahead, Ayo.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Let me begin with you, Honorable. One of the things that we heard that would happen in the budget as far back as June last year was that some professional bodies would be, and councils of the agencies will not be receiving federal allocations from the budget anymore. Can you confirm that that has happened? We understand that that would save Nigeria something in the region of 22 or 27 billion naira. Can you confirm that to us?
Yes, based on the proposal given by Mr. President, yes, we, of course, on our own cannot impute into the budget or make new submissions to them outside what we have done. But again, some Nigerians have raised concerns that some of these organizations are regulatory bodies and there is every need for government to fund the activities. So at the moment, that is what we have done. Going forward, I believe that if the agitation by Nigerians that some of these agencies and councils, should still be funded by the government, if we see it important to do so, of course we are going to do that.
Let me ask the same question from you, Mr. Onyekpere. What's your take on that? Because one of the issues that a number of people would say will help Nigeria achieve with that is to save some costs from some agencies that should be able to stand on their own feet and by themselves, except agencies that he has also mentioned. For instance, some people are referencing the Financial Reporting Council in Nigeria, that should remain funded by the federal government. But aside that, and a few others like that, what is your take on defunding, some would say, some of these agencies of the federal government?
Well, my take is that there should have been a clear policy position accepted between the executive and the legislature, which will guide the preparation of the budget. And once it is there in the proposal, the legislature should have been able to approve of same. That brings me to the Oversight Committee report on reducing the cost of governance. Some of these were issues that were raised in that committee, and we had a white paper so many years ago. And nothing has been said after the government white paper in terms of implementation. So I think there is a disconnect between the executive and the legislature. And I think what the executive proposed, that some of these agencies should look for their own money, particularly if the regulatory agencies charging fees from their members. I don't think it is a bad idea. But what I think should happen is that they should sit down and have a proper government white paper, a policy framework which the executive and the legislature will buy into, and then use it to prepare and approve the budget, because as at now, it appears they're working at cross purposes, even though the legislature is mainly resolved by persons from the political party of Mr. President. So they should sit down and agree on it.
Well, still with you, Mr. Ekwere, you mentioned something the other time about revenue and, you know, the budget and all of that. You said, while you were responding to one of the questions, I think it was Marquez's question you were responding to, that as at September last year, budget performance was something in the region of 25% or thereabout. Do you think there should have been some kind of review of budget performance? Because it would seem like we hardly have that kind of thing. And every year there is these conversations with the members of the National Assembly, with the MDAs, and next thing, you know, they're still getting their budgetary allocations. Do you think, or do you think there was any kind of review of the budget performance of the previous year before this one is signed into law, passed and signed into law by the president? Do you think that will help in any way to fast-track governance?
Yes, I think it is part of the oversight responsibilities of the National Assembly to review the performance of the budget, not just at the end of the year, maybe on a quarterly basis. And then if you look at the Fiscal Responsibility Act, it states that the Budget Office and Minister of Finance have to prepare budget implementation reports, which shows how much has been released and what has been done with the money after the end of every quarter, 1 month after the end of every quarter. Unfortunately, in the last couple of years, that duty has been neglected. That if you look at the website of the Budget Office of the Federation, you may find only either the first or second quarter of 2023 there. So we don't have these reports fully there. But what is the challenge for capital expenditure is not so much that money was released to MDAs and they failed to perform. The Budget Office was reporting what they had actually released. So the MDAs were ready to work, but the resources were not made available to them. And so that's why I just gave that narrative that, yes, every other thing had been done as at that time, but capital expenditure had only had 25% release. And that's why I was wondering of the need for a supplementary budget. At a time, you have not even fully implemented the original budget for the year. I thought whatever resources that were available should have been channeled to getting the capital budget of 2023 implemented up to 70 or 80% before we think of a supplement to a budget that has not been implemented.
Okay. Well, Honorable, you want to speak to that yourself, because it's something that is definitely of concern to many people, that we just passed the budget and no review of sorts. Mr. Ekwere just referenced the law that we may have been infringing over the years by that.
No, I don't think it's about any law. One of our core responsibilities as a parliament is our oversight function. And I can assure you, in the last 6 months, the current 10th Assembly, we've lived up to that expectation. We've lived up to the billing. Now, when we came on board in June after our inauguration, in the wisdom of the Right Honorable Speaker, we set up about 30 ad hoc committees to look at issues which pertain to how budgetary allocations have been expended in the past. And after that, the standing committees were constituted, and some of these standing committees have been able to visit the MDAs, investigate some of the projects which are being carried out by the MDAs. And I believe when these MDAs came back, during the budget defense, they equally looked at these issues. So to a large extent, over 90% of the agencies have expended their capital budget allocation for 2023. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes when these issues are raised concerning a supplementary budget, we equally look at it. Okay, for instance, the supplementary budget for the security agencies, when they came on board, we looked at the issue, the current, because Nigerians will just say, oh, they presented a document to you, you have approved, and no, we look at the issues. In the security sector, some of the procurements that they needed to do prior to that time had to be done in dollars, and they needed more money. So they brought this document before us, and again, it is also very important, and it's something we as a parliament will do as a matter of fact. In fact, in line with the Speaker's legislative agenda, we want to see a situation where, these monies are released on timely basis, and these funds are also, used for the purposes which they are meant for. Because you cannot promise to construct a road within a period of 18 months.
Honorable, pardon me for jumping in.
Contractors are not on site.
Pardon me for jumping in, Honorable. If Nigerians, feel like the openness is not significant enough. I think it's only understandable for them to ask these questions. Consequently, of course, we will expect you to respond to what the Honorable has said, whether you are or not you are persuaded about the scrutiny of the 2023 budget before this one was passed. But let me come back to you, Mr. Onyekwere. You mentioned something the other time about out-of-school children. And I think a number of people would say that that is one of the issues that should be addressed by the states. The federal government, of course, the president in his speech also mentioned the issue of collaborating with states. The budget of the federal government may be significant, but how significant is it compared to the budget of the states? Because it seems that the federal government comes under a lot of scrutiny, but the states maybe not so much. So how significantly do you think that collaboration will help if it happens? Because a number of people will say that that collaboration between the federal and state governments aren't significant. Consequently, they slow down in development.
Yeah, I think you are very right to say that issues around maybe basic education belong more to the states and local government than the federal government. And that's why you have this Universal Basic Education Fund, as well as even the committees in the National Assembly that should exercise oversight over the application and management of that fund. But if you look at it properly, the federal government is budgeting about 28 trillion. If you add the budgets of all the other 36 states and FCT combined, you get about 46 or 47, not up to 50. So the bulk of the money is still with the federal government. So I think that we may need to begin to put more searchlight on the state and local government level, because they also manage critical resources and are closer to the people. And their failure somehow is what blows up in this big picture of 20-point-something million out-of-school children. But we do not also need to compound the problem at the federal level by saying school feeding. You know, we are all in Nigeria. We've heard about persons who claim to be feeding our children when we are all on lockdown, which we know was clearly a lie. There's no need not to call out that honorable minister that served them and the other people. So there is no clear, transparent mechanism of how even the previous votes, because they're all lumped up most of the times under the service-wide votes, bulk sums of money, 200 million, 300 million, billion. Since Obasanjo days, we have been having that kind of bulk money, SDGs, no disaggregation for you to know. So if they said 300 billion school feeding program, if you want to monitor it, where do you start? How is it disaggregated between the states and local governments? Where is the register of the persons to be fed? In terms of, if I want to see in my state now, can I access any register of the children that are being fed in my state? And maybe I see the ones in my village or my local government to people I know one-on-one for me to confirm. So everything is shrouded in secrecy. And that's why I think there should be a policy framework or a legal framework, which comes back to the National Assembly. Put these things in the open. The reason why we've not been having value for money is because there is absence of transparency. So let nobody tell me you are doing school feeding program when all I hear are billions that are spent. I don't know who is being fed. There is no register. You remember even the social register. The governors came to Abuja and discredited it. And yet, money was made available to them for palliatives. They were supposed to now go back and do their own state registers. Which state has come forward to tell us that their register is ready, that we should come and see, and tell us the parameters of how they made it ready? They came to Abuja and said the federal register, they don't want it again. So these are even the federal register that they say World Bank contributed to. Can we begin to have access to it? You can't tell me somebody, you are protecting somebody's privacy. He's too big, but he wants my tax money to be used to be giving him dole out, or even money you borrowed, which you use my tax money to pay it back. So we must have a level of transparency for us to understand where the government is going. Otherwise, most of these things look like stories to some of us, particularly from the point of view that somebody claimed to have fed my children during COVID, and the person knew he or she lied. Nigerians allowed him to walk away with the money, and up till today, nothing has been done.
Well, accountability will certainly continue to be an issue, and I think that that's where the National Assembly comes in, because they also have a role on oversight. So do civil society organizations and the media. But let me quickly take you up on this issue. I mean, also following up on accountability, because you've been talking about bulk money being allocated to certain areas, making it very difficult for anyone to be able to trace or follow what it is that is happening there. This issue of policy coordination, evaluation, and monitoring and delivery unit, which the president has set up. I think is already been headed by Hadiza Usman. How are you optimistic? Because he says in the first 3 months, every quarter, there's going to be an evaluation. Do you think that would also help in the area of governance and accountability?
If properly managed, but I'm afraid every ministry every MD has planning, research, and statistics, right? And they are supposed to be giving quarterly reports to the Budget Office, Accountant General's Office, from which they will now prepare that budget implementation report to be published at the end of every quarter. So this could also be another layer of bureaucracy. But if it is well managed, because that bureaucracy on its own can only succeed if it is being fed with sufficient information by the MDAs. And the MDAs will have information to provide to you on what they're doing if money is released to them. What I was saying, maybe my colleague here misunderstood me, was that the Budget Office said, as at September, we've only released 25% of CAPEX, not what the MDAs have implemented. So the MDAs can only report based on resources made available to them. If the resources are not made available to them, it's garbage in, garbage out. So it is important we have such coordinating mechanism that will be on their neck to remind them to do what they're supposed to do. But at the end of the day, if the resources are not made available to them, there's nothing they can do.
It won't just be about resources. Some people say it would also be about impact. Yeah, resources,
value for money.
Value for money, and how it is affecting Nigerians. If we say, for instance, we allocate certain amounts of money to the health sector, it won't just be about building hospitals. It will be about whether doctors are there, are they attending to patients, how many patients have been attended. That's the kind of thing I would imagine the Nigerians would want to see. You know, if drugs have been purchased, if people are able to access the drugs, etc., etc. But for you, I mean, I do not know whether you think that this extra level of accountability will be important for ministers.
It may be necessary if the government is serious to make it work. I agree with you, because even if you look at the health budget, some of these budgets, you have very huge sums of money, 15, 20 billion, one line item, no details. So the only person who can effectively monitor and report on that is the author of that budget line, are those who wrote the budget line, and they know what it is in their mind. Because when you have those kind of money, they say project type funds, and it's just 1 or 2 lines, there's no way you, who is an outsider, can know exactly what is happening. For instance, even the Ministry of Health, in previous years, they were not drawing down their full budget, capital budget. Meanwhile, we are busy in civil society calling to say, oh, increase their vote, increase their vote. So some voices are beginning to say it is more about the absorptive capacity of the ministry. It's more about value for money. We had reports from global funds that drugs brought into the country were expiring at the central stores in Abuja and Lagos. These drugs were supposed to move from Abuja or Lagos to the zonal store in Enugu or Kaduna. From Enugu, it moves to the zone 5 southeast states. From the capitals, it moves to local governments. Drugs worth billions were expiring. At the time, these drugs were needed by on maternal and child care across the federation. So there are efficiency issues, there are value for money issues, there are resource issues. So I think if we are serious, we can hold every sector, accountable to what they are doing with the little resources available to them before we begin to call for more. I'm particular about the health sector. We can get more mileage out of that sector, the little resources, than we are doing. For instance, today, the National Assembly has passed a law, and Mr. President has assented to it. He said health insurance is compulsory. Now, what are we doing with that National Health Insurance Authority Act? If you implement that law to the letter, for instance, this year, about 1.3 trillion is going to health. You are going to raise premiums, insurance premiums of not less than 3 trillion a year. So the source of money, the pie available for health will increase beyond public resources. So if you get 1.3, 1.5 million from the Treasury, Federal Treasury, you get 3 trillion from insurance premiums, you get money from states. So you could possibly have up to 7 to 10 trillion available for healthcare. You use it to reduce out-of-pocket expenditure, because now we are one of the highest in the world, 70, 72%. And that's why I'm talking about results. He's saying we are not writing literature, we shouldn't write these things. You could have support documents which people could see, which says this is this money, and this is out-of-pocket expenditure, this is where we are going. Otherwise, if you leave it hanging, it will be difficult. It may not necessarily be there in the budget, but there may be result-based documentation available MDA by MDA, available to the public, not just known by the minister, his PAMSEC and directors. It's not their money. Nigerians ought to follow what is happening.
Indeed. Yes. So let me quickly come to you, Honorable. I mean, resources, I know you want to respond to that, and you can add your response to that, but let me ask you, take you up on resources, because that's one area Ms. Onyekwe has raised, issues. The fact that ways and means is still being explored, even though it does appear that we've exhausted the window for that. Crude oil prices, yes, they've been stable for quite a while. It's uncertain whether they're going to remain as bullish as they've been in the past year. 2023 was pretty good with crude oil prices. Crude oil is still the major source of funding for Nigeria's budget. How optimistic are you, looking at how much it is that we've earmarked, to spend this year, that we will be able to meet the revenue aspects of our budget?
Well, you see, before the budget document came in the Parliament, the House of Representatives had unveiled what we call the legislative agenda of the current House, called the People's House. And one of the cardinal objectives of that legislative agenda is this issue of accountability and transparency in governance. We as a parliament are working very, very hard. And again, before the budget came, before the budget defense commenced, we made it very clear to the MDAs that, see, whatever money you are given, for whatever purpose, we want to see it translate into realities as much as possible. And in doing that, when I mentioned the issue of budget lines, of course, just budget titles. But when they came for the budget defense, we went into the details. How do you intend to spend this money? And they told us. And the committees are taking notice of some of these things, not explaining details as a document. And the committee is going to be there, to continue to supervise and oversight the agencies in the implementation of this document. And that's why sometimes when people say, you are providing vehicles for members of the National Assembly, is a bit of luxury. And I was wondering how I would have been able to make it from my village in Upper Aguila, on Friday to Abuja. I had to travel throughout the night, to be here. You understand?
Are you justifying the vehicle that was bought?
No, but
they didn't have vehicles before they contested? Or is it a must that they must buy vehicles for you to do the job?
Well, there is also nothing wrong if parliamentarians are given vehicles to ease their job, because so much is being expected of us. You expect us to oversight all the MDs. You expect us to supervise and ensure that monies allocated to them are, duties are carried out in line with this money. You expect legislators to travel, at night and visit. Like, for instance, our Committee on Works, during their visit to some of the roads that are under construction, in time past, the committees will inform the contractors that you are coming, to supervise them. But what we do this time, which is quite different from time past, is that you don't even inform the MDAs that you are coming. Of course, if I tell you today that I'm coming to visit your house to check your books, you're definitely going to get prepared. And once you come, literatures are read out and, with the ceremonies. But what we do now is, to take them unawares. And that's exactly what we are going to be doing in terms of ensuring accountability and transparency in the implementation of the 2024 budget. Again, another thing that is very critical and important from the executive is the quality of personnel, that are being saddled with the responsibilities to manage these funds. In time past, we have seen a high level of incompetence on the part of certain individuals who were just given positions because of their proximity to power.
What did the National Assembly do about it?
Yeah, you see, time past, we raised, the Parliament raised issues which, of course, I think the executive
have you noticed anyone in this government?
No, basically, for instance, during the early part of the lifespan of the Parliament, we invited, you saw our investigations, the one being carried out on a job racketeering, oil theft, and all of that. We've invited actors, we've asked people to come and report, explain their actions to us. And the recommendations have been written, reports have been received by the Parliament. And if some of these reports are that heads of these agencies be removed, of course, we're going to pass it to Mr. President. I would believe that with the current level of collaboration and partnership,
so the Assembly has not seen anyone who you fit into what you describe as incompetent in this government?
No, you see, committee reports that are submitted to the House, if not until they are unveiled in the wisdom of the Parliament,
so take it as the answer
my responsibility. No, I cannot come to TV to say this is the report. It is against our laws in the Parliament.
One critical thing I think I need to point out to Honorable is about the security sector. You know, we've been throwing so much money on that sector, but we haven't been getting sufficient results commensurate with the amount of money we've thrown on them. It's not about buying a new jet or buying a new armored car or something. Just take the example of the last brutal massacre in Jos, in Plateau State. The fact that people reported that while this massacre was going on, there were 36 distress calls to the task force. You know, this task force, they have army, they have navy, they have police, they have all kinds. And nobody responded over a space of 48 hours. 48 hours. Over 36 distress calls. We acknowledged and started explaining. Even our young boys these days say, I'm going to explain tire because I can't fathom what explanation. Over 100 persons moved, either in vehicles or motorcycles or by horse or whatever, and cross places where there were checkpoints every 100 or 200 meters. And after the killings, those people have become spirits. They vanished into thin air. This is not the first time. It may not be the last. There's no prosecutions. There is no arrest. So this is beyond money, sir. Your committee needs to know who got these distress calls and refused. He should be fired. He's got no business standing there for 200 lives to be wasted. I'm not saying whoever he is. You call yourself a general and you cannot respond. Who is there in charge of the DSS that allowed this failure of intelligence to happen? And if you talk about it, says it's security, you don't know anything. It is not about knowing anything. It is clear. Whoever did not get this intelligence has no business continuing on my tax money. He should be fired. He should be dismissed. This is clear. People should be prosecuted. We can't continue tolerating excuses. We're enough of these excuses.
You see,
they don't need this money.
That is exactly our position in the Parliament, that whoever is given a responsibility and lacks the capacity to deliver, you know, should not be in that position, spending taxpayers' money. But again, you know, exactly what he has said is what I would have said 6 months ago, you know, when I was still in the civil society.
What has changed? You're in the assembly now.
No, it's not because I'm in the assembly. It is because I now understand better. You know, it is one thing to read a chapter of a book. It's another thing to read 2 chapters of that book.
What does that mean?
Yeah, what it means,
this context?
Yes, what it means in this context is that, yes, good and fine. We don't want any life loss as far as our country is concerned. In fact, as servants of humanity. Again, we must also understand that the armed forces, the military, these people who have the saddle responsibility of command and control are equally not sleeping totally the way we used to think. Yeah, because today, if you do not know how many attacks the armed forces have been able to save us of.
Yeah, but also, I think it's a straightforward call from him. Who received the call?
Yeah, it is important, and I believe that Parliament...
What other explanation do we need on that?
No. You must ask questions. Because it is one thing for someone to say, we made 48 calls within 30 minutes. It's another thing for an inquiry, a proper inquiry. He is a lawyer. He knows that you can't listen to one party to just pass a judgment. You must listen to both parties. So our committee in the House will definitely invite, you know, people from the community and invite the leadership of the armed forces to come and speak to us. Remember, not quite long, we had a sectoral debate, and the first group of persons to be invited was the chief of defense.
Well, we'll see what the National Assembly does about this case.
No,
because
definitely,
if it's out there that people receive calls.
No, definitely.
Currently
we are investigating, you know, the bomb attack in. The misplaced bomb, you know, drop in Kaduna, the killings that took place in that place, and everywhere we're interested. You know, even this 10th assembly, if there's any assembly that has considered more motions on this issue of security in Nigeria, I think within the last 6 months of the life of
we'll watch and
we've
see.
done more than any other
parliament.
We'll
see if the assembly will put their money where their mouth is. After all, You all have your vehicles now. So there will be no excuse.
It's not about vehicle.
No,
what is
you said there has to be a vehicle from Abuja to
what the vehicles do for us today is that if I need to travel from here to Moguno,
what we understand is you have to get results to the people.
No, there must be a parliament.
Bottom line.
A parliament that sat on a Saturday. To consider budget. Because we know that from 1st of January, from today, Nigerians
need to wrap up at this point.
To move their life.
We'll look to see what will happen to this one. If it will not be business as usual.
It cannot be business as usual with the 10th Parliament.
Okay, we'll see. I think the 9th Assembly said the same thing too. But this one, we'll wait.
No,
and see what happens.
No. You see, it's not about what they said.
Honorable Philip Agbese is Deputy Chairman, House Committee on Media and Public Affairs. We've also had Eze Onyekwe, who's a legal practitioner, as well as the lead director, Center for Social Justice. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on, and a Happy New Year to both of you.
Thank you, and
Happy New Year.
All right, well, back in a moment. Don't go away.
New Zealanders were amongst the first in the world to celebrate the arrival of 2024 with fireworks display in Auckland. The fireworks show from Auckland's 328-meter tall Sky Tower illuminated the cloudy night sky and was accompanied by laser light and animation show. It lasted 5 minutes with 500 kilograms of pyrotechnics launched from the tower, with the Auckland Harbour Bridge also illuminated. The Australian city of Sydney welcomed 2024 with a dazzling fireworks display featuring silver and gold pyrotechnics to commemorate the Opera House's 50th anniversary. The 12-minute spectacle included 36,000 shooting effects featuring comets, mines and cross sets, and 13,000 aerial shells including serpent, Saturn ring and horsetail willow shells. Over in Asia, Hong Kong welcomed 2024 with a New Year's Eve fireworks display over Victoria Harbour. And last but not least, in Taiwan, there were spectacular fireworks from the Taipei 101 Tower as the clock struck midnight. The display around the landmark skyscraper, standing at 508 meters, lasted for 300 seconds and included more than 16,000 explosions, while for the first time incorporated Japanese fireworks. Held for the first time in 2003, the Taipei 101 fireworks display has become one of the most watched events on television in Taiwan and is known for drawing a huge crowd of spectators to the streets every year.
now, yes, the president did give a speech, his New Year's speech. You've heard that. So now it's time for some feedback from people as well. So we've got a lineup of persons who are joining us virtually in our community segment. And so we've got His Excellency Simon Achumba, former Deputy Governor of Kogi State. He joins us virtually from the UK. Professor Adebola Abbas is a professor of international law, the global affairs analyst. We've got Professor Abiola Awoshika, who is an educationalist. And we also have Dr. Shadi Sabe, he's a lecturer and proprietor, director, Brilliant Footsteps Academy, also Vice Chancellor, Iconic University in Sokoto. Ladies, gentlemen, thank you all, and Happy New Year to all of you. So, Mr. Chuba, let me start with you on this matter. Governance is a big deal. I mean, if we don't get it right at that stage, chances are several other things will suffer. I don't know if you heard the president's speech. He did speak to the fact that, yes, inflationary rate is unacceptable. It is high. Galloping inflation affecting so many things, but policies that they've taken, he says, are in the best interest of the people. So as someone who's been there and now sitting from the outside and looking, seeing how the policies government is taking is affecting the people, this new year, certainly lots of expectations from the people. What would you say in terms of what the authorities need to do to ensure that this year, 2024, ends or happens or turns out to be a very good one for us all?
Yeah, thank you, Cumberland, and Happy New Year to Nigerians. Sincerely speaking, the president's speech is a great one, and it is quite encouraging. Moving forward, my honest advice is to match our words with actions. It's not just mere speeches and then we go back to rest. It is my hope that the president moving forward will ensure that before coming out to make policy statements, the plans are well laid on how it can be executed, and not just making policy statements, then going back to the drawing room to calculate how it can be implemented. I think that what has happened about the fuel subsidy removal took that course, making pronouncement before going back to the drawing room on how you can make it work. The same thing happened in the Naira exchange rate. You don't just come to make statements and then go back before knowing what to do. You sit down from the A to the Z of it. Look at this policy statement. How can it be implemented? What are the sequences that we are going to follow to get to our set target? This is what we expect moving forward. So that whenever the president comes out to say, oh, this is the policy I'm coming out with, he should be able to explain to Nigerians that, look, the first level, this is what we are going to do. At the second level, this is what we are going to do. At the third level, this is what we are going to do. By so time, God willing, all things being equal, this is where I expect that Nigerians will be. That is the new leadership level that we need to get to, and not just coming to the television, making promises, writing good speeches. We have had enough of good speeches. We have had enough of good promises, but we want these implementations to take place. Sincerely speaking, looking at the issue of fuel subsidy, a lot has been said. Who are the people benefiting? Who are the people? Who were the people benefiting from these fuel subsidies? And why was it so? Why is it up till now that we have not known them? And the fuel subsidy has been removed. Yes, we expected that the inflow to the state and local government should go by way of 200%. But that has not been seen. Those are the areas I want the president to look at. Then, on the other side is the issue of our electoral process. No matter how good a president may be, as long as the electoral process that throws up people into leadership is faulty, and it gives room for men who are not trustworthy, men who are not willing to work for the nation, who has no love for the nation, onto the corridor of power, we will continue to go in the cycle of complaints, of corruption. And that is what I think the president moving forward should address the electoral process. Take, for instance, the elections that has taken place in 2023. How many people has been punished despite the level of violations? We must set up a system that can check and punish violators in electoral process. INEC cannot take all that burden alone. There must be an agency. The Senate has passed that law. The House of Rep is still waiting. We need an agency. Until people are brought to book and punished for electoral offenses, we will continue to go in a cycle in electing men who are just coming out to put their hands into the purse of the nation and not move the nation forward. I believe that when that is done, and we have men of integrity, which the communities who are electing them know, fighting corruption will be, in fact, be reduced to the barest minimum. Because in various communities, there are no men who are good. There are no men who love Nigerians. There are no men who have good intentions for the nation. Fighting corruption, changing Nigeria to the standard that it ought to be, must start from the electoral process. Okay. How we elect them.
All right, Your Excellency. Yes, just hang on a little bit for us. We need to just equally get to the streets of Abuja to find out what the people expect. Yes, it's a new year. They're hopeful. They're optimistic about what should come this year. So we do have our correspondent, Larry Lasisi, who is at a place of worship, just trying to find out what supplications might be out there, both upstairs and sideways. So good morning, Larry. Happy New Year to you. So what's going on?
Happy New Year, Chamberlain. I'm in Maitama area of Abuja. I am in St. Matthew's Anglican Church, and service is going on right now, the first service of the year at this church. I can tell you we've seen a lot of people come in, including the former head of state, Major General Yakubu Gowon, retired, who worships here. He went in, we tried to get an interview with him. He declined politely and sent his best wishes to the station. We've also seen a lot of more people coming in, former ministers and people who are just here, happy to have crossed over into the new year and here to worship, to at least start the year on a good note. And I have one of the worshipers here with me who will be speaking with me about this morning, this year, and his expectations. Good morning.
Good morning.
Please, can you start by introducing yourself?
My name is QS Samuel Igbra. I'm a deputy director in the Federal Civil Service, and then I worship here.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Now, it's a new year.
Yes.
What's your expectation for the year?
My expectation is that we have security challenges all over the country, which was shown on the December 25th. That was one of the activities that happened. And then I expect the government to tackle security issues headlong so that we can sleep well. And then the other challenge I think we have is on food security. Many small-scale farmers have folded up. We expect the government to also look at that so that we can feed our country. And then We also expect the government to tackle issues of unemployment, which the president said this morning in his address to us, that is very aware that many Nigerians are unemployed. So we also expect the federal government to tackle the issue of unemployment. And then inflation also is a very serious challenge to us. Foodstuff has skyrocketed. Many people are unable to feed themselves. We also want the federal government to deal with those issues.
Okay, now you mentioned the issue of the president's speech this morning. What's your impression about this?
It gives us some hope. It is quite impressive. We want the president to walk the talk so that Nigerians can be assured of a greater years to come. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, you heard him there. Walk the talk. He's happy about the speech. He's concerned about some issues, and basically these are his expectations. The service is still on, and a lot more are still coming in. But like I said, a nice note to start the year on.
All right, Larry, I was just thinking, can't General go on just, it would have been lovely if you'll just let us hear his voice to the people, but who knows? You never can tell. Maybe when it comes through from the worship center, something might touch his heart and he says, okay, let me just give Nigerians a good message this morning. All right, Larry, thank you very much indeed.
As I was speaking to you, Chamberlain, Generally, he was among the first to get here this morning, and he came with his wife, and I approached him. He received me very nicely, so politely, and declined ever so nicely. Dear. I tried, you know how we do it, we try to help him. This is the first day, this is the first time we can talk to him. He politely pleaded with me, said, thank you very much, that I know he will talk to us if he wants to and all that, and declined.
Well, General Shunda won't give up on him. So he knows too that we would like him to speak on a regular basis. But thank you, Larry, and all the best to you as you go on with your worship.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah.
Indeed, we still have our guest here with us, Professor Ademola Abbas, Professor Abiola Awoshika, and we still have Dr. Shadi Shabe, all of them waiting on links. And so let me quickly take on Professor Abiola Awoshika. The president speaking very clearly. I mean, people are beginning to respond to the president's speech, speaking clearly on understanding the frustrations of Nigerians. You have been an educationist for many years, working in that sector. What are some of the frustrations that are still abiding in the sector, and how does this speech in some way provide hope for the new year?
Thank you so much, Mokwe. First of all, the president's speech is hopeful. And we're hoping in the education sector that if we can fix everything around us, and then maybe they'll have time for education. Because right now, I don't think it's on their radar. We're still dealing with the same issues. The 12 million, maybe 13 million out of school children. The state of our infrastructure, all of these are still abiding, but we're not complaining right now because we know they have a bigger fight in the economy. If the economy is right, if power is right, if food security is right, then maybe they will have time for education.
Well, shouldn't it be coming, sorry to interrupt you, Prof, shouldn't it be coming simultaneously? Because we cannot wait for other things to be right before children begin to go to school, can we?
No, well, look here. We have not stopped. And it has always been that, the private sector has taken the fight of the education sector, and we have taken it headlong. And we're not stopping. And we're asking the government to come alongside us. They have voted enough money, maybe a little bit more than usual in this budget. However, it's not in the budget, it's in the execution. When we execute budgets, what do we put the money into? So the sector is not quiet as such. With the help of the NGOs and private sector, I mean, the fight is still on. But it's, I mean, you take a family. You have a catastrophe on your hand. You fight the ones that are hurt first before you look at every other thing. Maybe it's us getting used to the fact that we don't get enough government help in education. But the fight is still on. We're expecting things to turn around, and we know, with this budget, with him taking making accountability the watchword in his administration, maybe the people who are in charge of education will buckle down and do what is expected of them. So that is not to say that we're just sitting back and letting education go to pot. We are fighting it, but at the same time, we see that the government needs to get some things straight. The state of, and it will affect us as well. We're in education. We have teachers who go to work every day, and they're taking this transportation. Yes, they've given us 50% off and whatnot, but that is not what we want. We want a situation where everything is settled. We go to the gas station and we can buy petrol for 200 naira instead of 650 naira. We're also involved in the hike in the foreign exchange sector, because if the foreign exchange sector doesn't settle down and we gradually get the currency where we need it to be, we in education are going to suffer, because you want to build infrastructure. This is where foreign exchange comes in, and we need to make sure that all of that is settled before we can say, all right, we're going to take the fight for education head on to the government.
Thank you so much, Professor Awoshika. Let me quickly go to Professor Ademola Abbas. Prof, I'm sure you must have had some time to listen maybe once again to the president's speech, or at least read the words of almost this 4-page speech. I don't know what parts immediately stand out for you, but from what we have heard so far, coming from 2023 into 2024, one of the things that people are beginning to ask for, apart from, of course, food on the table, the economy doing better, is consequences for actions taken. For instance, those who lost their lives in Plateau State, those who lost their lives in Kaduna, they want to know that there is sufficient accountability. They also want to see what has happened with those who have violated the Electoral Act. For you, I don't see that the speech is talking about that here, but how big an issue do you think consequence management will be going into 2024?
Good morning, Markwe, and Happy New Year to you and your colleagues in the studios, whether in Abuja or Lagos, and Happy New Year to all Nigerians. Look, we've been here over and over. First and foremost, the speech, as Professor Awoshika just said, is a hopeful one, no doubt about that. I think the president hit a few things, some good notes. Here and there, he spoke about food security, and what he just spoke about is a question of human security that is a big challenge in the country, and the lack of consequences. That must bother every Nigerian, to be honest with you. I listened to your previous speakers. There were 2 of them, somebody from civil society, and I don't know the other gentleman's name. I think he's a honorable, I think Obanga, if I remember what he had on his cap. Thankfully, they put a cap on now that tells us who they are. Obanga 1 or something like that. You see, he spent a lot of time, a little bit combative somehow, in trying to articulate what he thinks is the position of the government and the National Assembly. Look, whether we like it or not, the president, I think, and I'm sure the president hopefully will be watching your program today, the president was given the benefit of doubt by many Nigerians who voted for him, because he's somebody who Nigerians saw then as somebody who would normally stand with the masses, who understands masses' problems in Nigeria. And as he said himself in that speech, he gave his record. He was a senator of the Federal Republic. He was the governor of Lagos for 80 years. But much more important, President Shiwaji is somebody who is seen largely as somebody who identifies with the masses. And he needs to listen to the masses. Nigerians are crying. Nigerians are dying. Nigerians are bleeding. It is not enough to continue to make good speeches. There must be proper implementation. The president should not listen to those who are talking to him, who are saying to him what they want him to hear. I was in government before, and I'm happy you have a former governor with you there. When you have been in government, you understand that a lot of sycophants are around you who tell you only what they want you to hear, not what is happening on the street, in the public. At the end of the day, whether you're a minister or you're a senator or you're a House of Rep, the buck stops on the president's table. So there will be need for consequences. The president must get on that. When there are no consequences, people will do whatever they want to do because there is a serious case of impunity in the country. One of the things I took from the president's speech as an example, he said that Nigeria is open and ready for business. But permit me to disagree with Mr. President. We are open for business, but the question is, are we really ready for business? It's a call to foreign investors. We need dollars in this country. We need pounds. We need foreign currencies in this country to be able to buoyant our economy. But the question is, are we ready to give foreign investors what they want in our country? We are running a country now in which big companies are packing up. How can they be packing up on the one hand, and we are telling others that we are ready for you to come in? No, we are not ready as we should be in this country. We are open. Nigeria is a very open country. I give Mr. President to that. But we must move away from cliches. Cliches won't save us. We can say we are open and ready when we know deep down in our heart we are not ready. I ran investment for Lagos State as a special advisor to Akim Yambodi of the Lagos Governor State on overseas affairs and investment. And I used to tell our investors that, look, we have challenges in the country, but beyond those challenges are great opportunities. That is what we need to emphasize. There are opportunities in Nigeria, but we must be able to frontally tackle our challenges, and we are not doing that near enough. Professor Wojcicka spoke about the education sector. I was a professor in the United Kingdom for 10 years. I am in Nigeria today. I have a friend in this country. Who is a professor in a university in Ibadan there. A professor in Nigeria earns 450,000 naira per month. In case you don't know that, that's about $320 or $350 a month. That is a professor. Now imagine I'm speaking to you now from Abeokuta, capital of Ogun State. That professor lives in Abeokuta here, cannot rent a house in Ibadan, goes to Ibadan about 3-4 times a week to be able to deliver his lectures to his students. How much do you think he spends on petrol? It's a big question for us. I'm not even talking about the big things. Mr. President must listen to Nigerians. Nigerians are crying, and Nigerians don't want much. I saw Mr. Obanga, whatever the name of the gentleman is, who was justifying the procurement of SUVs and this and that to parliamentarians, saying that, because they need to catch people and where. Is that how you must justify? Nigerians are not saying you should be trekking to where you are going to supervise. Nobody is saying that. But we are saying that as people who have direct oversight under the constitution, you cannot be seen to be spending 140, 160, 170 million naira on procuring SUVs and to tell us on national television that, because Nigerian roads are bad. Then what then do you tell the contractors who are in charge of the road? It's your responsibility to supervise the fixing of Nigerian roads. So what I'm saying in essence is that we are in a deep trouble, whether we like it or not. We cannot sugarcoat anything anymore in Nigeria, and that is the bitter truth. So the consequences is very, very important, because people will steal money from Nigeria. People are fiendishly corrupt, and they know they can get away and do silly deals at the end of the day. What you hear from Nigerian government every day is that somebody has been accused of stealing $80 billion, 80 billion naira, 100 billion naira, criminal amount of money. But by the way, have been stolen from the country. Then what happens? You hear the case, there's so much noise on television, on all media, Then after a year, everything dies down. What happens to the money? Somebody goes to the room and will do a silly deal with the government. Say maybe you steal 80 billion, you give them 5 billion, you think that is all right? No. That is lack of consequence. That is impunity. And what message exactly are we giving to those who are coming behind us? So we need to get real. The country needs to get real. But Mr. President, listen very carefully. You need to get real. You told Nigerians not to pity you, and we are not pitying you. You knew what you were coming into. You knew that Nigerian economy was in a mess when you took over. So there is no room for excuses anymore. I agree with Professor Soyinka when he visited you, when they asked him to rate your government. He said, I've always given every government 1 year. So Nigerians will give you a year, we'll give you 6 months, we'll give you a year, because I understand that, of course, you can't fix everything overnight. The government cannot fix everything overnight. However, 1 year is a long, long time for Nigerians today. And every Nigerian today is bleeding. And every Nigerian is crying, is hopeful that this government will fix it. Mr. President, please, we implore you to fix the country. This country needs decisive action. Enough of words. What we need today is decisive action. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your intervention, Professor Abbas. I'm sure my colleague Ayo would like to take the last question to our guest in Sokoto, Dr. Shadi Shabe. Ayo, over to you.
Well, yes, actually, I'd love to take, the Professor Awishika on a number of things as well. But let me ask you, Dr. Shadi Abe, well, you are also in education, so it could come to you as well. One of the things a number of people consider to be a high point in the year gone by is the issue of student loans. I checked through the speech of the president this morning. The only mention of anything education was a recap of what he has said about education being one of his 8-point agenda. How significant do you think, and the news information from last year tells us that the president promised, or the federal government promised, that the student loan will kick off this month. How hopeful are you that indeed that will happen? Dr. Shadi, that's for you. Okay, well, Dr. Shadi Sabi, are you with us? Okay, we'll come back to him later then. But Professor Awishika, if you're with us, could you please respond to that if you can? How significant do you see that being in helping particularly the tertiary education level to find its balance? Okay, I'm not sure anyone can hear me, guys. So maybe we want to take it back to you, Markway and Chamberlain.
Let's go to Dr. Shadi Sabe, who is in Sokoto. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program. So go ahead and tell us, I mean, you also interface with people, young people at that, and generally speaking, so perhaps you could tell us what their expectations, perhaps also adding to yours, Dr. Sabe. Go ahead and talk to us on this new year, the president's message, and what you expect him to do for the people.
It seems you're muted. I didn't get your question, Chamberlain.
Okay, can you hear me now, though? So, Doctor, what I'm asking is, yeah, go ahead and tell us, since you interface with a lot of people out there, the president has spoken saying he understands that, yes, the galloping inflation, the interest rate is really tough, but he's doing something, or whatever policies they put in place is in the interest of the people. Now, in context of that, tell us, what do you expect the president needs to do? And then after that, expectations from the people.
Thank you very much, Chamberlain, for that question. I listened to other speakers and I was quite impressed with the presentations. However, I'd like to say that what the president has said today is to give hope to Nigerians. He mentioned a couple of things, but I'd like to take us back memory lane a little. 2023 was a turbulent year for Nigerians. We started the year with a policy hangover of the redesign of the Naira that hit virtually every Nigerian from all corners. We had a fierce, electoral process, and that followed with the swearing of the president on May 29th. And, capping on that was his immediate removal of subsidy, and yet Nigerians witnessed, a drastic increase of PMS from 195 naira to today over 650 naira. And of course, that had a multiplier, a ripple effect on the economy, from the global issues of stagflation to the Nigerian lowered, economic growth, high inflation, and all of that. And, like everybody has said in this program, Nigerians are facing a lot. Take aside the security issues. That's one serious challenge that, it's the topic in itself. Nigerians are hungry. Nigerians can move from place to place. And of course, we have given the president time, knowing that in the last 4 to 5 months of his presidency, he has been working on the budget of the previous government, in addition to the fact that we're still trying to grapple out of, a battered economy. Now, moving very fast to today's speech, I listened to the speech of the president and I picked out, a couple of issues. But what I am really, particular about is the president hasn't said anything new. Some of the things that the president said he has said before in the last couple of weeks and months, maybe because it's a new year. So we see them as, old things he said on a new day in a new way. And I'd like to look at, he talked about the economy, security, the Siemens energy power project, the refineries, moving to 500,000 hectares of farming land. He talked about taxation and also, monitoring his ministers and appointees. But I think what Nigerians are actually looking for is, like one of the speakers said, the need for the president to walk the talk, the need for the president to act on all these things. He said, Nigerians are not ready for excuses. The president needs to be in charge. The president needs to hold every appointee accountable. We saw a lot of, things going down in the last administration. Some of us felt the president wasn't in charge. Some of us felt appointees were not held accountable because we feel that the president can't do it alone. The president is working with a team. The president should find a way to listen to Nigerians from a raw perspective. The president should have his ears on the ground and try to understand what's really going on. Nigerians expect nothing less from a full implementation of what he said. Our hopes are not really raised because, like I said earlier, the president has said
all right, so apologies. We'll have to thank you this morning. I mean, time does fly. Dr. Shadi Isabe. We've also had Professor Abiola Awoshika, Professor Ademola Abbas, and His Excellency Simon Achuba. Thank you all for your time here today on Sunrise Daily. And a Happy New Year to all of you, notwithstanding the challenges.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you for having us.
All right, so there you go. That is the show today. We do thank you all for watching. Yes, it's a new year 2024, and we do hope and pray that we'll make the most of this year, notwithstanding the challenges, because they will come. And after all, what are we without those challenges? I mean, will your win be as sweet without the challenges? I mean, I heard some people say that your victory is sweeter considering the challenges that you're able to overcome. So you look at it in that context. So thank you all. Happy New Year to you. I'm Chamberlain, so goodbye.
Indeed, but just before we go, I think it's very important to also state the new programming notes. Yes, Sunrise Daily has come to you 9 to 11 a.m. and that will be for some time. But we also have other programs that have now been moved. Business Morning has now, well, it's now going to be Business Afternoon, I guess. Business Incorporated will now be on from between 1 and 2 p.m. West African time. You will get all the information on markets, economy, business conversations. So do set your time for 1 p.m. Nigerian time to get all of that information around business and the economy. It's been wonderful joining you this beautiful New Year's Day, the 1st of January 2024. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maope Ogun Yusuf.
I wish you a happy new year. I'm Ayo Makinde. Bye for now.